So let me introduce Sigurdur Birgisson. And we actually had question that how many of you came here because of the Devops word in the title of the presentation. Please raise your hands.
Who here is playing, buzzword bingo?
Yeah, you actually were correct. So I just now leave the stage and floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming here. I know I'm between you and coffee break. The positive thing, however, is that the coffee break gives me time to answer questions also during coffee break. So to be completely honest, this was a 1-hour presentation. I've shortened it a bit, but I will be rushing through some of the things. I'm going to share with you some of my experiences at my current company and as well as my previous companies with delivering high quality software. It's not so much about testing, but delivering high quality software. Some things about me. I currently work at Avencia, a company in Sweden. Previously, I've been at Atlassian in the DevTools department as a quality engineer, and I also work for JWay in Sweden. I am Icelandic by origin, but I lived in Sweden most of my life. And I do like to question things. That's kind of what I do in my work, question everything. I also do run part of this Öredev conference in Sweden. So some context about Avencia. We were founded in 1998 on the Stockholm Exchange. We have offices mostly in Sweden, Lund, Helsingborg, Stockholm, but also in Norway, Oslo, and Cebu in the Philippines, and Chicago. About 240 people. Our clients, B2B, B2C, e-commerce clients, some of you might recognize some of these clients. I was, asking people yesterday if they knew any of these brands. Puulan & Pyret was actually one of the ones that could be known here in Estonia, also Coop. Several different industries. Puulan & Pyret, we launched their site in November, completely new e-commerce site. So for the development context of what we do a lot of projects. We have a project focus. But at the same time, we have a product thinking because what we do is only e-commerce. So we've got a lot of components that we reuse, that we build on internally. So we need to think about how to build our product sustainable as well. Only e-commerce sites with maturing team, meaning we have a lot of senior people, but we also take in a lot of new people, just like any other company. Some about the tech, we build on top of the Episerver platform using in River PIM and usually .NET backend, React TypeScript frontends, a lot of integrations with ERP systems, payment providers, etc. Deploy to Azure, and we use GitHub, TeamCity, and Octopus in our tooling. So I joined this, when I joined, there wasn't much talking about quality. I joined 2 years ago, and there was actually only one consultant there that worked as a test consultant. And basically, the whole company needed a little bit of a, revamp of what is quality to us. Getting bigger clients that have bigger requirements on us. So one of the things that I've done is we've established a small quality team, and our vision basically is this. We want to empower developers to confidently test by providing training tools and environments. We want to keep the team's output and identify improvements and foresee and prevent problems before they become problems. So basically, this doesn't include that we are testing, right? Because we want to enable our project teams to deliver great and high quality software at speed. So this comes from my experiences at Atlassian, where we actually didn't have any testers. With QA at Atlassian stands for Quality Assistance Engineering. That later became Quality Engineering. And then actually I've recently found out that the cloud QA team has actually been dismantled. They're now developers and SREs, other types of roles. So I was supporting teams of 30 developers, which means that I am not able to test everything, and it's known. So that's why everyone has to take responsibility for quality. Going back to the basics, what is quality? When I ask this to a smaller audience, I usually, ask people, but what is it? Oh, well, it's, according to requirements, no bugs, no crashing, etc., right? And it means different things to different people. Like this coffee cup is really nice, really, looks good, but it's probably horrible to drink coffee out of it, right? And the same thing applies to our development context. We have different quality, we look at quality differently in our development teams and our customers, because our customers view the world differently than maybe the development team does. So there's a lot about the perspective here. And the foundation on top of what we, work with is actually this, that quality cannot actually be tested into a product. It has to be built into it. And because it is the team as a whole that is building the product, thus responsible for quality, right? And another model of quality is actually this. This is my favorite model of quality. It comes from Gojko Adzic. He created this in 2012. It stems from Maslow's pyramid of needs, which basically means that you need to satisfy the bottom level to enough extent until you can reach for the next levels, right? And for software, that means that actually it needs to be functionally okay and deployable before you can actually look at security or performance, etc., right? But if you focus too much on functionality, you will never reach higher than that. And that's actually where I see a lot of traditional testing testers, they focus on the bottom part and forget to reach for the next couple of levels. And if we reach above performance and security, it's actually usable. The software is usable, so a user can use your software for something. And when they can do that, they can find it usable. So useful for their intent. So they are able to do the things that they need to do and gain the value out of your software product. And top level, successfulness. So successfulness in my business of e-commerce is conversion rate. It's all about money, right? So at Atlassian, we measured monthly active users. That was the main KPI. And so successfulness for any software product needs to be defined and measured, right? Just like any of the other levels here. And so what you actually want to achieve is a slice of, a good slice of all levels to reach your the successfulness that you can aim for. For software delivery, there are needs. You want to keep your high quality. You want to move faster before your competitors reach after you. You want to keep customers happy, and at the same time, your development teams want to be productive. So this is where DevOps comes in play, right? DevOps is a buzzword. It's also a culture, a mindset, and a lot of things, right? So I kind of wanted to condense it. So this is actually the Wikipedia definition. DevOps is a software engineering culture and practice that aims at unifying software development, dev, and software operations, ops. The main characteristics of the DevOps movement is to strongly advocate automation and monitoring at all steps of software construction, from integration, testing, releasing, to deployment and infrastructure management. It's the whole life cycle, culture and life cycle. And why? Because we want to aim to shorter development cycles, increased deployment frequency, and more dependable releases in close alignment with business objectives. So there's a lot of things, a lot of words in this that you need to take into account when thinking about what DevOps is and how it should be used in your business. Another diagram that this diagram is not specifically from Dan Ashby. I've taken it from his blog because he's got an extension to it that I'm showing later. But basically, DevOps is about a continuous flow of things happening in your business, in your teams, We're continuously planning new things. We're branching out, coding, merging, building, releasing, deploying, operating, and monitoring. We're doing this preferably several cycles per day. Preferably, you deploy small changes to production several times a day to measure how did we improve our production systems today. This is also shown when you talk about A/B testing and are we going to build this feature. So basically an example of this is this, I don't remember where it came from, Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and they released a new feature, the first version of a new feature. It's a button that says feature name. And they measure if someone clicks that button, they know that someone wanted to use that feature. And if they run that in production for a day or a week, they will see how many people click that button. If no one clicks it, it's not worth investing more in that feature, right? So there are a lot of metrics, and we've talked about metrics in other talks as well. These are some DevOps metrics. There are more. There are the 4 key metrics named in the DORA Accelerate report. But basically what you want to look at is deployment frequency, change volume, etc. And all of these things come back to what are your quality goals, right? What are your goals at the moment? Because I don't believe in measuring everything because of measurement's sake. What you want to do is measure whatever you want to improve, right? So it comes back to what are your quality goals. So I was going to talk about my journey at Evensia, not about this other theoretical stuff, right? So basically, I joined the company and there wasn't actually much testing going on, right? And when it comes to testing, there are certain things that you need to have as a hygiene, right? You need to do some testing. You need to know what the state of your software is before you release it, right? And how it ties into DevOps, this is actually my favorite, from Dana Ashby, how DevOps and testing align, right? We are actually testing everywhere. We're just not calling it testing all the time. There are several different activities that are covered in all the testing that we do in DevOps, and those are some of the things that I'm going to talk more about. So when I joined, the only testing that was really, really good and well done, that was actually on our pull request. So it was an existing practice in our development teams. It was put in place before I joined the company. And basically what it meant was just, if you do a code review on a pull request, it's a +1, and all pull requests also had to be pulled down, tested locally, and that's when you could give it a +2. And so this is actually, a rock solid foundation for delivering higher quality at the company at the moment. And this is around, we test here in the branching area, right? Before joining, I had done a lot of developers exploratory test sessions with many, many different teams, so that it was a very natural part to start with when I joined the company. Basically because the team is responsible for quality, and rather than only relying on local testing, we could, every integration build that went onto our test environment could be tested on by the whole team. So basically, we have regular test sessions once a week or once bi-weekly, paired up, time-boxed, and we test what we've developed the last week and report bugs throughout this session. I have a whole talk about these test sessions, so if you want to know more about them, I can tell you more later. Also, what I wanted us to do is have a new prevention focus. Basically, we want to make sure to think about risks already in planning. So basically, I did these activities at Atlassian, and they worked really well. We call them feature kickoffs, design sparring sessions, and QA kickoffs. Basically, design sparring sessions, discussion between QA and UX. Basically, because designs and wireframes are always static. There are no background jobs. There's no user tampering with them. And so they're not as static as the designers think of them, right? Also, we have common failure scenarios that need to be designed for as well. Like in the e-commerce business, there will always be payment failures. So the question is only, how are we going to handle them and how are they going to look? Because those scenarios had not been covered by designs before I joined. Because we want to avoid developer rework. Another activity that we do for avoiding rework is user story QA kickoffs. So basically, brainstorming of test ideas before development starts. Before development starts is a tricky time frame. When is that? Well, when a developer picks up a user story, they need to think about what they're going to develop. And then usually what happens is they start writing code, right? But if you actually pick up the user story, think about how your solution is going to be, and pause right there. And that's when you want to have the discussion of how will my solution fail? And those are the risks that you want to mitigate. You want to take them into account when you build your stuff. You want to create unit tests for them, etc. Right? Usually it's a paired activity. You want to keep them short, but basically you have a risk plan before development. So now, DevOps at Evensia. So we wanted to expand our test coverage, right? And so what I did was actually, no one at the company had actually talked about DevOps before. So I basically hijacked the word because it's a buzzword, right? And so I hijacked the word, I created the Evensia meaning for that word, and suddenly I got people on board, right? So basically, we have this center of excellence, which is a groups of champions of different areas. And within the DevOps focus area, we identified environments, test automation, and monitoring and alerting. Common things that you want in a DevOps context, right? But we weren't that good in those areas. And to be able to get developers and architects on board, DevOps word was kind of nice to, hang it up on. So, environments, aka infrastructure as code. So basically we have a lot of environments, so development, test, UAT, staging, production environments, and they all need, to be managed. We have deployment schedules, we have the availability of them. Some of them are hosted at the customer site, some of them are third-party integrations, and we needed to, kind of standardize on our build and deployment strategies for our different platforms that we were using. And so in pure DevOps kind of way, you need to start small, like this feature button, right? So basically, we had some convenience scripts in different repos, in different projects, and basically just getting them all into the same repository was a big win, because then everyone knew that this repo existed, and we can find deployment scripts and those kind of things there. And it also triggered the thinking of this new behavior. So if I do something more than once, it probably should be automated as a convenience script that other people can use. Because if I have to do it once in my project, there's most probably the next project needs to do exactly the same thing, etc., right? So start small. Same thing with test automation. We're actually pretty bad at test automation. There was some automation, but there was no clear strategy, no clear structure into what type of testing are we doing, or this type of unit testing, or are we doing unit testing more including those modules, etc., and API level testing. You've all seen this pyramid. And also the performance and security testing. So we needed some, common strategies for that. And also here, starting small. So some projects, the projects that we have, the project teams that we have are in different place in the life cycle. some new projects that could focus on getting a solid foundation of unit tests, while another project just launched and they were in a post-launch trauma because they were afraid of deploying once more to production. So they needed some end-to-end testing that actually, just looked at the crucial flows. So basically, I coordinated some efforts to try some of the levels and some of the, tooling that I thought would fit our company, and then synergize those. So no, actually, we have some tests on all levels, and then new projects can adapt and take. And then also this triggered the behavior of when we're doing a kickoff, when we're thinking about the risks of a new user story, then I need to think about what needs to be automated. Monitoring and alerting. So because we are running production services that users rely on, we were having some monitoring and some, but it wasn't collected, and it wasn't, because the developers in the company were actually just used to being application developers. But this thing of being responsible for services running in a cloud production environment was kind of new. So we needed to do some training. We needed to collect what tools are we going to use and what scenarios, and what alerting and monitoring do we need. Create dashboards and create a best practice within the company. Also here, we started small. First of all, if you have dashboards, but you're not showing them on a TV, is it worth anything? That's the thing, right? That was the first thing that we had to do, because there was actually only 2 or 3 teams that had TV monitors so that they could show these dashboards. At Atlassian, in my team there, we had 3 TVs running dashboards that were, rolling. So we actually probably had 15 different dashboard views of what was running in production. We also did have some availability checks, but now we have uptime checks for all our production sites. And also, because we were doing, so similar sites for all our customers, we could reuse and create standard packages for our different monitoring tools for developers to use. And so this triggered the behavior of, all right, so if one of our production sites is down, how do we act on it? So this has actually triggered some more discussion on how do we handle incidents, and how do we, work with our clients and communicate during incidents. And another question that I really like to ask our developers, if they question the need for monitoring and alerting, I will say, well, when you deploy this to production, how will you actually know that this feature works? Because that's not a guaranteed. So in summary, there is a lot of improvements that everyone can do at their company, and there's a lot of measurements that you can do, metrics, etc. But as one of our clients, they came to me and said, "We want this static analysis tool." Okay, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with that information? And they were like, I don't know. We just need to run it because our investors said it. All right, but we need a strategy for that tool, and what are we going to do? So what does it improve? Measure and track that. What changes in the development flow will that require? And how will it look in our pipeline? And how do we handle the results? Because if we only do this tool and get this report, if we don't plan for the fixes, then that testing is useless. Right? It doesn't provide any value. And quality has to be actively built into the product. It will not come by itself. So you can test as much as you want, but if you don't build quality in, you'll still have a crappy product. All of this has given me better confidence in our developers and our development teams, because they have become more quality aware. Even though I'm not talking about testing when I'm talking about DevOps, they've started to listen to me more. So to use a buzzword wisely is like basically one of the takeaway for the strategy here. And my vision for success when it comes to testing and quality work in DevOps is actually this. So for every activity that you have, or for every step of the journey within your delivery that you have, you can do something. So we have prevention for risk-based exploration. We do early detection in pull requests, code style. We can look at static analysis. Regression is test automation. Detection, it's kind of late to find it there, but with manual testing. And then late detection with end-to-end smoke tests that preferably run on all your test environments in your production. And then you alert for the known risks, you monitor for the behaviors, and you log for your unknowns. And then don't forget to monitor for your business, because essentially, if you're not making money out of what you're creating, then you'll be out of business soon. Thank you very much. We got some time for questions.
We have exactly 12 minutes for questions.
How many? 3 minutes.
12 minutes. You actually performed really well, because I just looked from agenda that coffee break will start right after
13 minutes, yeah.
Right, half past 3. So first question.
Thank you for your presentation. On your one of the earliest slides, you have said about local testing. What did you mean? Did you mean the Spotify approach when the QA goes to developer and they quickly explore testing the code, what was written, or some kind of different local testing?
So, good question, and I was probably not clear there. Actually, that local testing is another developer pulling down the code from GitHub and testing locally. So basically, there are no testers involved here. It's only the development team, who is usually developers, project manager, UX, and me as a quality coach. But because I'm helping many teams, I won't be able to test everything. So basically, it's a foundation in how we work is actually, we don't have any testers, and the testing is done by everyone. So that local testing is a developer testing.
Thanks for the presentation. How did you make your developers comfortable to test?
How do I make them comfortable?
Yeah, to test.
So one of the things that I've found really valuable is pair testing. So in our exploratory test sessions, I always pair up with people, a developer with a PM, front-ender with a back-ender, and I will join as well. QA will join there. And so I make sure to pair up with everyone on the team as well, so that, because that is not for me to test actually, but more to coach that person. So basically continuous coaching of, how to test is a thing that I've seen work.
Did you try with writing test cases prior to development of the ticket and so on?
So I wouldn't call them test cases, but the user story kickoff, QA kickoff that we do becomes a bullet list of risks to take into account. Basically, make sure to think about this thing, make sure to cover this risk. And so I wouldn't call them test cases, but they're still a bullet list of things to think about.
Thanks.
And they feed into the pull requests.
Thank you. So you said that you are displaying test results on screens, right? So it's visible for everyone. So what happens afterwards in your case when something goes wrong? Like you have some metrics that the test needs to be fixed, or so what's basically happening when you see that some alarm is going on in your case?
So I might have been unclear there as well, because what I was talking about when it comes to dashboards were monitoring and alerting dashboards, basically visualizing the health of the production system. If it's something that I visualize least is actually test cases and test results, because for me test results doesn't mean anything. Because basically the result of us delivering high quality software is the actual software, right? And I don't care about the testing involved there as long as you don't create an incident in production, right? So yeah, I don't visualize the test results. Anyone else? Oh, people want coffee.
Yes, they want, but then I use my right to ask questions from you.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you do not have testers, but this actually means that you don't have people who have like position tester in the organization. Probably it just means that if you are developer, you also fulfill tester role and developer role.
Yep.
How do you educate your developers so they actually know all those skills what we actually expect from testers, for example, that some code coverage and test techniques and things. What more tester should actually know? Exploratory testing? Intuition.
So I would say this. One of the best testers that I know is actually a software architect of Bamboo. And he's really skilled at testing because he is a really skilled developer. I would say that several of the skills that we require from good testers can be trained. It takes time to train that, but you will become better developer doing it. But then there are some skills that, for example, you were talking about coverage. Actually, to become a good at testing something, you don't need to know anything about coverage, right? You can actually become a really good exploratory tester just by knowing the insides and outs of your application. And so one of the things that I've taught my developers to think about is learning their product more on a holistic level. So that's one of the key things that I want them to learn more, because developers are usually, very much focused in their code, very much focused in their methods, etc., and sometimes forget the holistic view of the product and how the users use the product and how the product interacts with other systems. And so those are the things that usually I need to coach them on. And then these things like explore the application, like the test sessions that we do, they do have charters saying that explore this area, keep these things in mind. So a lot of it goes like into just like mentoring a novice tester, and that's what we need to do for the developers as well.
Thank you.
There's a question there.
Okay, and this will be the final question. Now you are between the coffee break and...
My time is 5:02, so there's actually 5 minutes left, right?
There is such thing as a cost of development, and it is no secret that manual testing work costs less than development work. So making your developers performing manual tests doesn't look as a cost-efficient solution. So what's the point having only developers in the team?
So let me see if I understand your question correctly. So you're saying that there's a notion that testers cost less than developers.
I'm talking about manual testing.
Manual testing.
It's not a secret. So manual testing work costs less than development work.
Right. And so what my view is on that.
So you said that you don't have testers in your team, and your developers performing manual tests locally.
Yes. So I would say this: developers that are forced to do manual testing, they will gain knowledge that developers that won't, right? And so I see a value in developers becoming better at what they do rather than it being a waste. I also see that a notion, like, this comes up all the time. I don't see value in having a test team, because what's really important is that your team delivers high quality software. That's what you're selling. I don't care how you achieve it really, and if you are optimizing your different parts of the company in different ways, I would say that is a suboptimal solution. So I would argue that it doesn't matter that the notion is that it's cheaper to have manual testers, because I don't see the value of it like that.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
So now
question here.
there is nothing else between you and the coffee break. Then just a big applause.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
And this is your test box.
Thank you.